Okay, we are live. Are you ready to get nuts, Cindra?
I'm ready to go crazy.
Okay, let's do this. On today's episode of Playing Small is Canceled, we have a very exclusive treat. She's the founder of the Mentally Strong Institute, an award winning keynote speaker with a PhD in performance psychology, and a mental performance coach who's worked with elite teams like the Minnesota Vikings and the United States Olympic track and field team. No big deal. Her client roster includes Fortune 500 companies, helping executives unlock their high performance edge. And she's the best selling author of Beyond Grit, 10 powerful practices to gain the high performance edge, just to name a few, which, by the way, I have in my hand as we speak.
Yeah, let's go.
She's just
Love
a
it.
juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific human being. Please welcome the curious, abundant, mentally tough, and kind Dr. Cindra Kamphoff. How you doing, Cindra?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to have an awesome conversation with you.
Every single time you and I connect, it's just like you speak my language. It's
Yes.
a soulmate in a different capacity. And I'm so pumped to continue the conversation because it's funny because we were just talking before we went live. I don't want to waste a second because that's how valuable I think you are. And I don't want the audience to not get every second out of this conversation. So for anyone that might not have been familiar, please do a deep dive, play catch up. We're just going to dive right in. Are you ready for me?
I'm ready. I'm
Okay.
buckled in. Let's go.
One of these concepts that I saw you talking about recently, then we're going to dive all into the book and so forth, is this idea of letting go. And I know
Yeah.
that's kind of a big concept, but I wanted you to unpack that a little bit and why is that so important and helpful for us?
Yeah, so my book, Beyond Grit, covers these 10 practices of high performance. And they're based on these 10 practices and like the research in performance psychology about what allows people to thrive. And practice number 9 is live and let go. And it's actually, of all the 10 practices, the most difficult one for people to practice. And I would say because we make meaning based on the past, and we're constantly trying to understand our current based on what's happened in the past. And many times we have a hard time moving on quickly from setbacks or mistakes, and we let them imprint in our mind. And in the book, I talk about like just making sure that you work to have a short-term memory of mistakes or difficulties or setbacks and more of the long-term memory of successes. I have this really cool tool that in Beyond Grit that I can share with you if you'd like.
Absolutely.
That is all about letting go. Are you ready?
I'm ready for you.
Okay, well, I got to tell a story to start.
Please.
So I do some work in football, and about 12 years ago, a guy named Adam Thielen was on a college football team I worked with named Minnesota State. And if you don't know who Adam is, he now just re-signed with the Minnesota Vikings.
Very happy about that.
I'm very happy about that. And you should listen to his whole press conference because it's like all sport and performance psychology and mindset stuff. It's so cool. And he made the team on the Vikings, obviously working his way up from the practice squad and stuff. And there was a game where the Vikings were playing the Saints, and Adam fumbled the ball really early on in the game. And he went over to the sidelines and he made this action, okay, where he kind of put his fist right here and he pushed it down. And no one knew what he was doing besides I knew, because it was something I had taught him. I taught him this tool called Learn, Burn, Return. And, next drive, he's right back in that fast. So, Craig, how fast? Can you snap with me? Can you say that fast? There we go. And he catches this 43-yard catch that was beautifully placed, ended up helping the Vikings win the game. And so afterwards, this ESPN reporter who had been watching Adam the whole game went up to him and said, there's so much pressure on wide receivers during a playoff game. What did you do to let go of that fumble so early and get back? And she said, what was this action? And he said, well, I was pretending to flush a toilet. Okay. And so the how that connects to the tool Learn, Burn, Return is when we're overthinking or ruminating, we want to ask ourselves first, what did we learn? And we want to try to use the prompt like next time I will, because there's nothing that you can do about the past, right? All you can do is learn and move on. And then the burn is where you choose the same phrase or action every time. And that allows you to strengthen a new neural pathway so that you move on that fast. And so what Adam was doing was pretending to flush a toilet. Or what I do is I say, how fast? That fast. some of the football teams I work with all have a that fast bracelet that they wear to move on quickly. And then the return means you build yourself back up. You remind yourself this is your passion, your purpose. You know what you're doing. You're here for a reason. And most people, Craig, they might learn, but they don't burn or return. They don't intentionally move on to protect their confidence, and they definitely don't build themselves back up. And that's what we need to do to train our mind every day to overcome our own barriers.
What an awesome framework. And obviously love the way that you tell the story. So it's interesting because I totally get that. And I know I love football too. And I remember one of the attributes that make a really good quarterback, they used to say those with a short-term memory, meaning if they throw an interception, like Tom Brady, the very next drive, forgot about it, just on to the next play. And you're talking about a specific play here. So I'm just wondering, it makes perfect sense to not linger on anything that can deflate our energy. Is there the opposite effect where if something happened that was really good that you want to let that marinate, or should you also be quick with that as well?
I think for us day to day, I think we need to make sure that we're really planting in those successes, and I think about the power of imagery where your mind doesn't know the difference between something that you vividly imagine and something that's actually real life. And so what I would recommend to an athlete or to a leader or anyone who wants to build their confidence, that one of the best ways to grow confidence is to remind yourself of your successes and imagine them. And so in my Beyond Grit book, I have this framework where I tell people to imagine 3 past successes every day and then a future success. And we want to try to do that as many details as we can. And this is just really important for you and I too, right? I mean, I gave the example of a football player in the story, but I find, Craig, when I ask people to raise their hands in my audiences, like I ask how many people are overthinkers, to be honest, like 90% of people raise their hand and identify as an overthinker. And I think the other 10% are just overthinking if they should just raise their hand. I think most people are just overthinkers. And you can use this tool, learn, burn, return. I call myself a recovering overthinker because I used to just like passively, endlessly, and we have to protect our confidence.
Yeah.
We have to move on when things aren't perfect.
That is so good. Unbelievable. And so relatable. This is universal. It's not niche. I want to just hold up the book one more time because I'm very selective with who we endorse because our brand, the credibility. I not endorse this enough, guys. And I just want to mention one of the really cool parts about the book is that you can read it straightforward like a novel, but you can also pick it up and go to any given chapter at any time, depending upon what frequency you're in or what energy you're looking to tap into. So, for example, Register for Responsibility 101, right? Master your green light. Think like the world's best. You can pick up a chapter anytime and immediately be transformed and participated in a new reality. And it's beautiful. So I just want to acknowledge you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I wrote the book that way because that's how I like to read books.
Same.
One of my favorite books in the world is Jack Canfield's book, where he has like 100 short chapters, and I would just read one every night. And that's what inspired me to make the book the way it is, so that particularly people who maybe don't like to read, they can just go to the overthinking chapter and read it, or the let go chapter, whatever they feel like they're struggling with, they can get some tangible tools.
I love it. I love it so much. So a couple other things that you speak about that I think will really resonate with everybody today. And that is this idea of success. It's so good. You mentioned in the way that you articulated is that it's not about titles or these things, but rather who you become. And I think that's so powerful and such a game changer for people. How important is that more so to put an emphasis on who you're becoming?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think successful people have goals, and we know this actually from the research that, successful people all are goal-oriented. But I think we sometimes get it wrong where we maybe have a goal and we sometimes are unrealistic about those goals, but we don't really think about who do I need to become to reach that goal. And I just put this on my podcast last week.
Great podcast, by the way.
That's cool. Thank you for saying that.
I want everybody to subscribe.
Thank you. It's called The High Performance Mindset. And I just had this little 5. Of course it is. And I just have this little 5-minute episode called like See It, Believe It, Become It. And the point of it is where you think about what's your goal for like this year or 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Like what's a big goal you're going after? And then identify like what do you need to believe about yourself to reach that goal. And I think we don't necessarily like think about who do I want to become? And, so for example, Craig, I want to keep on developing our business called the Mentally Strong Institute. And in 10 years, I want to have positively impacted 10 million people. Okay, that's a huge, big, outrageous goal. Definitely a stretch goal. And then what I have is 10 or 12 statements I say to myself every single morning that helps me think about who I need to become to reach 10 million people. And one of my I am statements that I say every day is like, I'm one of the best damn keynote speakers you ever heard. Okay, because that's who I think I need to continue to become. And that doesn't mean that you're not enough the way you are, but your identity is what powers everything about you and what you believe about yourself. And the cool thing is like we can shift that and we can adapt that and we can mold that. And your identity is going to help you get to those goals. So being really careful and intentional about your identity is essential to get to your goal quicker.
So good. I think of this word embodiment, right? So you say these things and you do these affirmations, and it's not just for the sake of saying it, but I know you. And when you tap into that energy, you become the type of cat that wants to empower 10 million people, right?
Yes.
It's a different energy. And I think that from my experience, a lot of people that I coach and teach, a lot of people have these limitations, self-imposed beliefs, gremlins, assumptions, interpretations. And
absolutely.
One of the ways to overcome that, to become your perfected self, is this idea of conviction.
Yeah.
Having absolute unwavering certainty in that what you have to share is valuable. I think anybody can connect that, but so many people struggle. And I love what you just shared, because that's a tool to practice flexing the muscle of that embodiment, of identifying who you have to become and then reinforcing it.
Yeah, and reinforcing it every day. You don't necessarily have to say them out loud. You can, but I would be really intentional with writing those 10 things down and starting with an I will statement or an I am statement or I can statement. But then reminding yourself of these things every day, because a thought repeated over time becomes a belief. And the cool thing is like your brain is moldable and adaptable and you can change it. And I think that's what's powerful about mental training.
Unbelievable. I couldn't be more on the same page with you. So there's so I love it. I want to shift gears for a second. I know you talk about this idea of an authentic leader and authentic leadership. And I'm just curious, I think I know, but maybe some of the audience can utilize this. What do you mean exactly when you talk about this idea of an authentic leader?
Well, I would describe an authentic leader as somebody who shows up in the way that they want to show up. And I think authenticity is a practice, meaning it's not something that you just know and are born with. You have to really take a step back. And, this morning I was just on a coaching call where I asked somebody, like, if you wanted to be described as a leader, in 3 years, how would you want people to describe you? And she said caring and, she said authentic and somebody that's respected, and then we thought about, well, what do we need to continue to do to show up in that way? And I think there's so many barriers to showing up authentically. It is really a journey and a practice. Craig, we just did this national research study where we surveyed people all over the United States about confidence and where they get confidence and what gets in their way of confidence. We asked them about what leaders can do and not do to build confidence, and then the bottom line to businesses to confidence. And a couple of things that were really fascinating we found that confidence isn't just a personal issue like you might think. Like, Craig, I know you have to build your confidence. I know I have to build my confidence, but it really impacts the organization. For example, companies are less likely to be profitable, right? It impacts the bottom line, it impacts retention, and productivity and stress and anxiety in the workplace if people aren't confident. But here are the biggest barriers to confidence, okay? These stats are startling. We found 70% of people dwell on past mistakes. We found 67% of people struggle with a harsh inner critic. We found 63% regularly or consistently compare themselves to others. 62% of working Americans frequently or often feel like they're not enough. So we're talking about 62%. And we found 60% of people frequently or consistently have a fear that holds them back. 61% of people believe that they have limiting beliefs about themselves that get in their way of being their best. And so when we think about breaking through from those mental barriers, these are the mental barriers that we have to continue to break through to be our best and to be our highest and, our authentic self.
So good and so helpful. And when you share some of the data, I guess it's not super surprising, right? Now the question, how do people that can study with you or read your book or listen to your podcast or have the opportunity to work with you in some capacity, they can begin to cultivate the tools to combat those inevitable challenges that we all have. We talk about in the wisdom of Kabbalah, we study how there's kind of two gods. One is the creator, and then there's one of the physical world, which we call the opponent or the ego, which is relentless in having us play small and keep us on track. And so it's not a question of killing it, but having the tools to fight it off so you can stay in your flow, stay connected, and help people really reach their optimal level, which is exactly what you did in that story that you shared with Adam Dean.
Yeah. And I believe, Craig, that we all need a toolkit that we have to continuously use. I think of confidence as like a feeling. It's a decision. It's a skill. It's a belief in yourself. And what I think is powerful about that is it's not something you just have when you turn on. Even Joe Montana, legendary quarterback, said like confidence is a fragile thing. And so I do believe that we need tools in our toolkit, and we have to train our mind every day to get unstuck because we're human and it's human nature to have automatic negative thoughts and get in our own way. One of my favorite tools related to like dwelling on past mistakes, I would tell people to use that tool, learn, burn, return. And I use it every day, right? But when I think about this harsh inner critic, that 67% of people said that they frequently, all the time, experience, right? And what I mean by a harsh inner critic is like this internal voice that magnifies self-doubt and that magnifies your flaws. One of my favorite tools from Beyond Grit for Business that you can use is called the Truth Meter. And this is where you just ask yourself 3 quick questions when you see yourself like spiraling on an automatic negative thought, right? And automatic is important because you're not always choosing that thought. And the 3 questions are like, is this thought true? Okay, most of the time our thought is not true. Is this serving me? Like, is it helping you be the biggest version or the highest version of yourself? And usually it's not, right? So the 3rd question is, what is a more empowering thought you could choose right now? And most of the time we can choose a more empowering thought, right? So is this true? Is this serving me? What's a more empowering thought? And that helps you just like examine those thoughts and get unstuck and, helps you choose more of like that inner coach instead of that inner critic, the wise, all-knowing person that tells you the truth. Like I think of my Yoda or my inner critic or my inner coach is my Yoda, like what would Yoda tell me? It's wise, all-knowing.
I always find it so fascinating how when people have the ability to question if certain things are true, it's always not. It's never the truth. True. It's just been true for us. And that can be transformed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or what you and I talked about on my podcast, by the way, that's why you should also go listen. So you can hear Craig just launched this week, his episode. But you talked about like the capital T truth versus the lowercase truth. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, it maybe feels true to us, that lowercase truth. So that capital T truth, it's really our interpretation of the situation or the event. That's our lowercase truth.
Which is ultimately how we experience this world, our interpretation.
Exactly.
We either see possibilities or we see limitations.
Mm-hmm. And you get to decide. That's the cool thing. Is it like it is your decision? So, and I find when you're really trying to push yourself, Craig, like going after bigger, courageous goals, that's when that negativity can be really loud, you know? And so that's why it's like you got to soften that inner voice, quiet the inner voice. And we know from the research that self-compassion, which is just this practice of being kind to yourself, softening that inner voice, realizing that everyone suffers with something. And it's, you know, and taking more of a mindful approach when you're really harsh and critical of yourself, that is actually connected to higher performance and more motivation and higher confidence. So that's why we need to soften that inner voice, because it's going to help us get to our goals quicker.
Turn the volume down or change the tonality. But yeah, I love it so much. So good. I want to ask you something else before we land the plane. But first, before I do, aside from the book, which everybody should grab, not just one, but a second copy for someone they love, aside from that, what else are you most pumped about right now? What are you most excited about?
I am pumped about our confidence study. We found a lot of fascinating things, and people can go to confidencestudy.com to learn more. I'm also pumped. I have a new book coming out with Simon and Schuster, where the manuscript is due Monday, Craig. So like I'm finishing it up this weekend, tightening everything, and that's going to be really amazing. And it's really this practical book to grow confidence. And I'm just excited about our team. You know, at the Mentally Strong Institute, we have mental performance coaches and executive coaches, and I'm just really pumped about the impact that we're making in the world. And so if people want to learn more about our coaching, you can go to freementalbreakthroughcall.com, where you can actually request a free mental breakthrough call to learn more about coaching and how it can help you. But what we do in that space is help you create a breakthrough, like a moment of more clarity to help you really get out of your own way and be the best version of yourself.
Love it. We'll share all that stuff in the show notes. We're going to put the replay everywhere in different communities of ours. Everybody should have a coach in anything that they want to improve upon. I used to not feel that way. I was a little bit more stubborn, but now I have a coach. Literally, I'm training for the Chicago Marathon right now. I have a coach. I want to develop myself in different areas of life, whether that's spirituality or real estate or business. I have a coach for everything, because the right person can help you tap into more of your own potential and become more of who you were destined to be. And I can't think of anybody better that does this stuff than you.
You're the best. I agree that everyone should have their own coach. I've had my own coach, same person for 10 years. You know, she's just really helped me play bigger and get out of my own way. And you might say, well, Craig and Cindra probably never struggle with negativity or getting in their own way, but we're human too, you know? So that's why, you know, it's like you got to have somebody supporting you to say, you got this, you're crushing it, you're killing it, you can keep going.
I would even argue that me and you experience it more than most people, because we're constantly developing and working on ourselves. On a spiritual level, the closer you get to the throne, the more the opponent likes to feast on you. But that's why you and I are obsessed with developing ourselves and equipping ourselves with the tools so that we can stay connected and in flow.
I completely agree. And maybe because we're both really pushing ourselves to big, courageous goals, you know, again, that's when that negativity becomes even a little bit louder, you know, that imposter syndrome creeps in, which, you know, sometimes my clients will say, like, I'm feeling like an imposter. And I'm like, well, actually, that means you're really pushing yourself, because feelings of imposter are really normal and natural. You know, you just want to make sure you don't always listen to those or believe them.
That's right. And especially when you're outside your comfort zone.
Exactly.
That's when they come. It's actually a good indication you're on the right path.
Exactly.
I love it. All right, final nugget I wanted to ask you. You talk about this in the book, and I find it so interesting. You talk about how the world's best own the moment. What do you mean by that?
Oh, that is so great of a question. I would say what that means is like being where your feet are. And what that means is practicing mindfulness. And mindfulness is just like this intent of being where your feet are. And what the research shows is only 47% of the time we're actually focused on what we're doing. So over half the time we're not. And we can get focused a lot in the future, where we experience pressure or anxiety. We're focused on the outcome. And what we know is we are all at our best when we're in the moment and we're focused on the process. So the process just means to me like small things that you can do to be successful. So when I'm working with sports teams, like today, I'm working with a football team, and we're actually writing some of our process goals for the game on Saturday to help us kind of focus on the small things, because that is what allows us to play free, play like we're a kid, and release the judgment. And so many times we're so outcome focused or future focused. And so just knowing that pressure and anxiety all live in the future can help you reduce that. And the great thing is you can train your mind to be more in the present moment through mindfulness exercises, meditation, breathing, are all ways you can be more in the moment, because that's where your best lies. Only place that high performance happens is in the present moment.
I'm actually taking a note.
I love it. What are you writing down there? What stood out to you that I just said?
A couple things, and that is process goals. Instead of being so focused on the outcome and the future, which is typically where anxiety awaits. And then the second one being the only place high performance resides is in the present moment.
Yes. I mean, to experience flow, your mind has to be in the present. It cannot be in the past or the future.
That's amazing. It's so true, so powerful. And it's so easy to get caught up in the outcome and all these other things, which is because it's sexier. But really, and I wrote about this in our book, and it's a concept called marry the process, divorce the outcome. And you reminded me of it, and you said it a little bit differently, but the process is what leads to the magic. Most people are just so looking for instant gratification. Where is it? Where is it yet? But that's not how it works. And I don't even just mean logistically, but spiritually speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Nick Saban, legendary Alabama coach, said, we never talk about winning the national championship. We just talk about dominating the opponent in the next 60 minutes. And I think the reason we get so outcome focused is because you turn on the TV or the news, or, like let's say ESPN in sports is always talking about who won, who lost. And so it's really, and we all know we need goals to keep us going. And many of those goals are outcome goals. Those outcome goals can provide motivation and excitement and help you get out of bed in the morning, but they can also produce a lot of anxiety and frustration and pressure when you don't feel like you're close to it, right? So keep your attention on the process every day. If you need some motivation, then go to the outcome, to help you really think about what you're going after.
To reconnect to why you started in the first place.
That's true. Yeah. And what the reason is for that goal to begin with.
Yeah. But can you fall in love in the day-to-day? How willing would you be to sit in the discomfort of the day-to-day in the process? And I think of like great teams, it's training camp, right? It's the practices, it's the in-between, it's the camaraderie, it's the film work. Those aren't so sexy, but those things consistently lead to the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And when people say, like, can you actually do that? Yes, I've seen professional football players be a master at the present moment, where they're on track to break an NFL record. And I remember this one conversation in a hallway where a running back went up to a wide receiver and said, like, hey, congratulations for the last 5 games. And the wide receiver was like, what do you mean? Like he wasn't focused on the numbers, even though he was on track to break an NFL record, because he was so in the present moment and like, what does he need to do right now to get better? And that's how you got to release that anxiety and that fear that can come from just focusing too much on the future. Be where your feet are. It's something you can practice.
100%. Great place to put a pin in it. Until next time. This is like just chapter 1 with what we can discuss, but this was
amazing. I think so.
Definitely. Love your energy, love your heart, love your soul, love everything that you're doing in the world. I want to encourage everybody again to grab Beyond Grit, grab a second one, give it to someone that it would help. And also check out her podcast, her website, hire her to speak. She does coaching, everything in between. Cannot endorse her enough. This was incredible. hang up for 1 second. I want to connect to you after. But thank you so much for stopping by today and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets.
Awesome. Thank you, Craig. Thanks everybody for watching. I know you're listening, so thank you.